Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bloomerang Academy. We're so glad that you're able to join us today. As you're joining, if you would please go ahead and put into the chat where you're joining us from and what the weather is like where you are. We are in Indianapolis today. I have with me the lovely Diana Odero, and it is 36 degrees, Burr, and sunny. So it's about that time of year, though. It's starting to feel like Christmas and the holidays. So I guess that's about right. So please drop into the chat. Tell us a little bit about where you are and what the weather is like where you are. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. This is our dial-in number should you need audio for any reason. It's 1-669-900-6833, and we'll drop that into the chat in just a few minutes. Couple of housekeeping items. We do have live transcript available. Should you want to be able to see the words as they're being spoken, you can click on that and they will pop up at the bottom of the screen for you. We also have two different places where you can share. One is the chat feature, which is a great place for you to share ideas. So as we're going through this today, maybe you come up with something where you've used this before and it's really helped you and you want to share it with others. This is a great place for that kind of interaction between you. And we love when we see our participants doing that because it's always good to share information. Should you have a question, a specific question that you want answered, it's better to place that into the Q&A if possible so that we see that. Diana and I will be kind of keeping an eye on that, and we'll try to answer questions when we can. So that's kind of the difference between those two. Real quick, other housekeeping items as we're going through the session today. If you see links or hear information, don't worry about trying to write it down. We're going to share the slides with you at the end of the day today. You'll get it in an email and you'll have a recording of this session. Any questions that we're not able to answer live, we will circle back with you and get those questions answered. So please don't worry if we get to the end of the session and your question hasn't been answered, we will follow up with you. And don't forget, at any time, if you need assistance, our support team is truly amazing, and you can reach them at support@bloomerang.com. So this is me. I'm your presenter today, Margie Worrell. I've served on the board at the Peace Learning Center. I've also worked with United Way of Central Indiana and Kiwanis International. And I do have two amazing children and two small dogs that might join us for the session today. Hopefully not. They always announce when the mailman arrives. So if you hear them in the background, I apologize and we'll just keep going. All right, so today we're here to talk about how to increase donor retention for your Giving Tuesday donors. So let's look at our agenda, what we're going to cover today. We have a lot to cover, some great information. Why is donor retention so important? We're going to talk about why do we keep going on and on about this? Why do donors lapse, leave, or stay loyal? What is a typical donor communication like for Giving Tuesday? We actually have some information on that we want to share. And then what should we be doing in regards to donor communication to help us really retain those donors that we bring in really at any time of year, but particularly with Giving Tuesday. And then we'll have a few final thoughts and that'll wrap up our session today. So, and I am going to just go off camera because I know sometimes my movement can be distracting. So I'm just going to do that. All right, Giving Tuesday is a big deal, as we know. It started in 2012, and you can see this chart demonstrates the exponential growth of Giving Tuesday. It's also been a big deal this year. This year was no exception. $3.1 billion of critical support for communities in the U.S. alone was raised within 24 hours. It's amazing. A 25% increase in giving since 2020. So in 2 years, a 25% increase. And 37 million adults in the U.S. participated in Giving Tuesday this year in some way. And that's a 6% increase over last year. So that's in the midst of COVID. So we can see that Giving Tuesday definitely has legs. It's something that has been extremely popular. However, I want to caveat that 1/5 of the annual nonprofit revenue is actually raised in December. And much of it is occurring on the last 2 days of the month. And we know that we see this end of year giving for tax purposes, right? So here's a graph that shows November 2020. The giving was around $137 million, close to 138. But in December, it was $306 million. So December far outpaces November, even with November having Giving Tuesday in it. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you did participate in Giving Tuesday, awesome, keep going. If you didn't, don't give up. You actually have some really amazing days coming up at the end of the month, and you can still utilize these retention strategies with those days as well. So it's not something that doesn't apply to you. It'll apply to your giving as well. Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve are actually bigger days for giving than Giving Tuesday. And here's a graph that shows December, and you can see that huge spike at the end of the month for giving trends. And this shows 2019 and 2020. 10% of all giving happens in the last 3 days of the year, which is really remarkable when you think about it. So why is donor retention so important? And we're going to launch a poll. I'd like to find out, and this is just a simple yes/no poll. Do you know your donor retention rate? No shame here. Just yes, I do, or no, I do not. And it's okay to be either one. Got 7 people out of 12. I wish I had some nice music to play for you. I'm not going to hum a song. I promise not to do that to you. Awesome. Okay, great. So I'm going to share these results so you can see them. I'm hoping you're seeing them right now. It says we have 78% who said yes, they do, and 22% who said no, they do not. And that's okay. I think that's great, because here's what we're going to do. We're actually going to talk about how you can find that number. So when you look at donor retention, your donor retention rate equals your returning donors in year 2 over all your donors in year 1. So for example, if you were looking at 2022, you would look at your returning donors in 2022 over all your donors from 2021. It's a very simple calculation. So that's something that you could go ahead and do, and then you'll know your donor retention rate. So looking at the average donor retention rates in the United States, this is from the Fundraising Effectiveness Project. You can see that we've actually had a downward trend in retention rates over the past several years. This 41.6% is all donors, all gifts. So that's this number right here. Okay, so it's the average of all donors, all gifts. But when we break this apart and segment this a little bit, we can see a big difference in our first-time donors with regard to retention versus our repeat donors. Our first-time donors, we retain them at about an 18.6% rate, which means out of 10 people, you might be retaining 2 when it comes to first-time donors. When you compare that to repeat donors, oops, I apologize, I went one too far. Repeat donors, we retain them at a 60% rate. So that means out of 10 people, you're retaining 6. So what's important here? Well, it's important to get people to that second gift. If we can get them to the second gift, we have a much better chance of keeping them as repeating donors. We also know that donor retention is important because the cost of donor acquisition is much greater than donor retention. It's easier, it's cheaper to retain a donor than to go out and acquire a new one. So the cost per acquisition is 5 times the cost of renewal. And also, when you think about this, the cost per acquisition, usually the initial donation amount will be 2 to 3 times less than that actual cost of going out and acquiring this donor. And also response rates. When we look at renewal response rates, they're 20 to 30% higher than acquisition response rates. So we have a much better return on investment, if you will, when we look at getting our donors to that second gift. Also, when we play this out from kind of the numbers standpoint, let's look at an organization. Let's say their original retention rate was 41%, and they want to improve their retention rate to 51%. They start out at the same point, right? If we extrapolate this, if we go down and run the numbers, you can see that just by increasing their retention rate by 10%, they are able to operate in the black for 4 more years, and they are able to have a total savings of around $500,000. So it's vitally important to try to retain those donors. So why do donors lapse, leave, or stay loyal? Well, a 2001 study done by Adrian Sargent, who is kind of the grandfather of lapsing donors, he's done a lot of research in this area, uncovered the top reasons why people stopped giving. And you can see here, 5% thought that the charity didn't need them. 8% said no info was given on how the money was being utilized by the organization. 9% had no memory of supporting the organization. And what that tells me is that this was something that didn't make an impression, right? The impact was not there with this donor. They didn't really feel connected. And we're going to talk a lot about connection, because connection is really important. 13% never got thanked for their gift. And then 18% reported poor service or communication. And you can see here the ones in these pink boxes, these are the ones that we actually can really have a direct effect on. So those are the ones that we're really going to think about as we continue to look at how to retain the donors that we have and bring in. Now, 10 years later, a completely different report done by Donor Voice in 2011 looked at why donors stay loyal. And interestingly enough, you're going to see that these are a reflection of why donors leave. So they stay loyal because they perceive the organization to be effective. They understand the work the organization does, and they know that it's important, and they see it as effective. They know what to expect from the organization with each interaction. They receive a timely thank you. They receive opportunities to make their views known. They feel connected to the organization. They feel like they're part of an important cause. The donor feels that his or her involvement is appreciated. Again, going back to thanking the donor, letting them know that they are important to your work. And then the donor receives info showing who is being helped. They need to be able to know what is happening with the donation that they give. So I just encourage you to think about, what's your thank you turnaround time? Studies have shown that the donors that are thanked within the first 48 hours are 4 times more likely to give. And not only that, but their gift will also be increased because of the fact that they have been thanked. So here's another study that's really interesting. It was on subscription-based donors, and it was done by the IU Lilly School of Philanthropy. And they asked them, what is your preferred communication and content from nonprofit organizations? And you can see that 52%, so over half, said that the stories and experiences shared by the people that their gifts have helped are vitally important to them. So again, it's knowing about the work you're doing, what's happening, connecting their donation to the work. 32% said frequent updates about the organization's programs and services. Again, if they're going to be a champion for you, they need to know what you're doing. 32% said emails with my donations impact and heartfelt thank yous. And 25% said educational and interactive webinar series related to the organization's mission and impact areas. So you can see that these components, it's really about that connection. It's about knowledge. It's about feeling that they've been thanked and understanding what's being done. So these are really important areas to keep in mind as you're communicating with your donors. So how to improve donor retention. Thank them quickly and personally. Illustrate that you know who they are. That again, connection. Segment your communications. That's how you can really demonstrate that you understand who the donor is by speaking to them from their perspective. And segmenting is one of the things we're going to demonstrate here in just a few minutes. Tell them how their gifts are being used or will be used, so that they understand what is being done, the work that you do. Tell them what comes next so that they understand and can anticipate that. Be curious about their motivation and solicit feedback. This is another one that we're going to talk about in just a few minutes, is finding out where are your donors, what are they thinking, and what matters to them. And this one's kind of a 201 level. Prioritize monthly giving is another way to be able to improve retention. It just makes giving easier. And we're going to talk about where and when you might want to prioritize monthly giving. But I do want to take a step back and look at what are some of the typical donor communications for Giving Tuesday donations. A lot of what I'm sharing with you today has come from the work of Stephen Shattuck, who worked at Bloomerang for quite some time and is a fundraising expert. And one of the things that Stephen did was his great $5 donor communications experiment. And what he would do is he would pick a random city in the United States, and he would give $5 for Giving Tuesday to 5 or 25 different organizations in that city. And then he would see what kind of communications he would get back. So he calls this the Great $5 Donor Communications Experiment. This occurred in 2015. So he was reporting out in 2016 on it. So how many of the 25 organizations followed up? Well, here's his report out to us. 23 sent email receipts, no thank you, just a receipt that was for tax purposes. 12 sent snail mail letters. One of them he calls a FASK, which is a thank you and an ask all in one. 0 handwritten notes. 1 phone call, which was a voicemail, and he said was rather lovely and actually did mean a lot to him. 1 e-newsletter, 3 e-appeals, one of them on Giving Tuesday, asking for money when he had just donated, and 1 event evite, which he unfortunately could not do because he was not in that city at the time. So I want you to look at this and think about this for a minute. And what I'd love for you to do is drop into the chat and tell us, what do you see here that could be improved upon? What are some of the things that perhaps these organizations missed? Handwritten notes, yes. Oh my goodness. I know it's really like just unheard of these days to do handwritten notes. And that's why it's so special, because it is unheard of. And I think that it really means a lot. I agree with you. Anything else that you think that they missed out on that they could have done differently? What are your thoughts about the FASK? I got one of those myself this year, and it did feel a little rushed to ask me again so quickly. I see here Christy says for a $5 gift, we frankly wouldn't have time to do a handwritten note. Totally understand that, Christy. Yeah. Katie said we have volunteers do phone calls after giving days. Great idea. Great way to use your volunteers. And then what's a FASK? Karen, yeah. So he calls it a FASK. What it is basically, and I got one of these this year. You get the thank you, but at the same time, they're asking for another donation. So usually, and I got mine within a week of my donation, and I'd given a pretty significant amount. I know. I hear you, Karen. And I'd given a pretty significant amount, and I felt like, wow, okay, so you're circling back so quickly. It felt a little rushed, right? And so we have to kind of think about it when we're connecting with our donors. Think about what we're asking for and what we're saying and doing. So yeah, and thank you for those of you that chimed in, really appreciate that. So what should we be doing and how can we do it? I want to show you 4 things that you can do now to increase donor retention from Giving Tuesday. So we're going to talk about segmenting and communicating promptly. It's not too late. Phone calls to your first-time donors and how to make that quick and easy using your Bloomerang database. Sending a survey to get their input is another thing that we can do within Bloomerang quickly and easily. And then sharing impact and storytelling to emphasize the importance of their donation. So the first thing I'm going to demonstrate in just a moment inside the database is I'm going to show you how to segment. And there are so many different ways to segment your donors. But this one's a really great way because I think it really helps you to be able to, the next slide I'm going to show you, to be able to really differentiate what you're communicating with your donor. So the way we're going to do it is we're going to start with all donors from your Giving Tuesday campaign, and we're going to find the average amount that was donated from this group. Then we're going to break that down into repeat donors and new donors from Giving Tuesday. And then our repeat donors, we're going to break that down further into repeat donors that gave above the average amount, and then repeat donors that gave below the average amount. We'll do the same thing for our new donors above the average amount and below the average amount. Now, the reason to do this is so that we can have a different type of communication for each one of these audiences. So for our new donors above the average donation amount, this is a really great place to do a phone call. Pick up the phone and start to develop that relationship with this donor. A 3-minute phone call will boost first-year retention by 30%. So that's a really great way to increase that new donor retention. Now, repeat donors above the average donation. This is somebody who's been giving to you and they actually gave again on Giving Tuesday. So maybe consider doing something special. Maybe you want to send a video thank you. You can insert videos into an email inside your Bloomerang database. Really easy to do. And it's become quite easy to record a video on your phone, on your laptop, and be able to attach it. So maybe consider this group to follow up for recurring giving. If you see that you have a donor that is giving and then giving again, maybe they are people that would be interested in putting themselves on a schedule and making that a simplified process for them. So they'd be a great one for that 201 level recurring giving. Now, let's look at people who maybe gave below the average donation amount. For new donors, maybe acknowledge that this is their first gift and explain how it'll be used. Maybe they aren't as familiar with your mission. There was probably something that drew them to your mission. So talk to them about what's going to come next. Share the kind of programs, the kind of work you're doing, the impact stories. Really try to draw them in so that they can understand more deeply what's happening with their donation. And then repeat donors that are below the average. Maybe this is someone you definitely want to acknowledge their gift with gratitude, but consider reaching back out for feedback. Maybe something's going on and it would be good to have that information. So this is someone that we might want to send a survey to, and we're going to talk about how to do that inside Bloomerang. Part of the reason to consider phone calls for first-time donors is that research shows that phone calls to first-time donors works. First-time donors who get a personal thank you within 48 hours are 4 times more likely to give a second gift. And a thank you call from a board member to a newly acquired donor within 24 hours will increase their next gift by 39%. So really, when we do a thank you call, we have an opportunity to increase retention rate, speed to second gift, and the amount of the second gift. Now, this is just something, a little bee in your bonnet to put for maybe for next year, is to think about diversifying your communication and what your communication plan looks like. And you can go through and kind of chart this out as you see here. So this is something to consider for next fall. I would say tuck this away. Also think about the fact that this could look different depending on that segmentation that we just showed, right? So for your new donors, it might look different and probably should than for your repeat donors. But I just wanted to put this model in here so you would have it moving forward in your arsenal of tools. So we are going to demo these 4 things inside Bloomerang. We're going to segment and communicate promptly. We're going to show how you can assign tasks to make phone calls to first-time donors. We're going to show how you can send a survey to get input from some of your donors. And you are also going to show a little bit and share some ideas around impact storytelling to emphasize the importance of their donation. So I'm going to step out of my slideshow and go into my database. So you can see here, this is our dashboard. Yours probably looks somewhat similar to this. And you can see one of the things we have here is our donor retention wheel, which is a really great tool. It puts your donor retention right in front of you. And you can see right now, my donor retention is 10 out of 16 donors retained. And this is 4 out of 4. Now, the different views here have to do with different filters around, and I'm just going to show you really quickly. So if you want, you can go in here and look at the different filters, and you can consider what that means to your organization. But it's great to have that right in front of you when you log in. So I'm going to actually start with segmenting donors. And in order to segment them, I'm going to need to run some reports. Remember that we said we want to find out the average amount that was given on Giving Tuesday. So for you, you will click New and go in and start a new report. You're going to build it from scratch, and it's going to be a transaction report. And then you're going to do the filters. Now, I'm going to go back because I've actually already created this report. I'm going to go back here and show you what this looks like because that's a little faster than going through and building it in front of you. So all donations on 11/29/22. Oops, that's not the right one. I apologize. All donations for the 2022 giving campaign. All right, so you can see here the filters that I've created for my organization. Giving Tuesday was between 11/28/22 and 11/30/22. So it's basically the 29th. You might have different parameters, so keep that in mind. But you want to probably have a date filter on here. And you're probably going to want to have a revenue amount filter on here. For us, it has to be at least a penny. And it can be up to infinity. So that covers any dollar amount in revenue that we got. I did want to exclude any in-kind donations, so I did put that in here as well. Now, you can see here, I don't even have to run this report. I can get the information off of my screen because what I'm really looking for, what's the average donation amount? So I have the amount right here. It's $84,891. And I have the number of transactions here, 215. So I'm going to see how fast you are. Can anybody give me what the ballpark is? Put it in the chat. What do you think the ballpark is for our average giving amount? Looking for the mathematicians. It's a tough one. I don't expect you to be able to do it. It's actually $400. So when you take that, when you divide 84,891 by 215, it comes out to about $400. So that is our average donation amount. Okay. So now I'm going to go back to my report list, save and go to report list. And I have all of my Giving Tuesday campaign donations. In order to make the report where I want to show my new donors above the average donation, I can actually just create a copy of this report where it's all of the donors overall and go in and modify it. Okay, so I would click on copy. and it will come up with this. It'll show me an exact title with the word copy afterwards. If I click into it, I can actually add in some more filters so that I get just my new donors, right? So that's what this report is here. And I'm sorry to keep going back out, but it's faster this way. All right, so the date stays the same. I did not need to change that, but I do want to have a specific constituent. And what filter I want to put here is a constituent filter. So I have the constituent filter, and I know the filtering can be challenging if the filtering is something that you want to kind of learn more about. We do have a lot of academy classes about filtering as well. But in here, I clicked on Bloomerang Donor Group is, and I put new. So Bloomerang Donor Group, new. This will give me just my new donors. And you can see that for this Giving Tuesday date on 11/29, my new donors, I had 12 new donors, and all of them are listed here. Okay. So I have now created that report. Let's go back, and actually I'm going to, well, I guess I could save. I didn't do anything to it new, but let's go on and look now at how we can take this report. Again, we would create that copy. We would open the copy. Basically, what you're doing is creating templates and then adding to them. So here is that filter that you just saw, right? The date filter. Here is the constituent filter that makes it for just new donors between the 28th and the 30th on the 29th. And I'm going to add one more filter. This filter is for the amount. So that filter, I'm going to want to have new and above average donors. I'm going to put $400 to infinity. And when I do that, you see that those 12 donors, I'm now down to 3 of them that gave above $400. I do want to point out that when you make a copy and you get ready to save it, you do need to go into details and change the name. So for this one, when I made that copy, it was just going to show me this part, all donations on 11/29 new. So now that I've added this filter for the above average donor, I put and above average. So I'm going to save that and go back to the report list. So now I have my all donations on Giving Tuesday. I have my new donations. I have my new and above average donations. If I make a copy of new and above average donations, I can open that. We just keep building, right? It's just like we're building onto these templates. And what I'm going to do then when I come in here, go back to the details. This would say above average, just change it to below average. Change the filter. The amount filter, all you have to do is click on it. Remember that it said $400 to infinity. Well, now we're going to change it and make it $0 to $400 for our below average donors. Click OK. And then we go to our report list. All right, I'm going to pause for a minute because that was a lot all at once. Is everyone still with me? Any questions? Okay, awesome. So now when we do that, keep in mind we've created these templates for our new donors above average and below average. I can go here to new and above average, copy it, just like we did before, right? I'm going to open it up. This time the filter I'm going to adjust is not the amount, not the date. It's going to be this constituent filter, okay? Now, I don't want my new ones. I want my returning ones. So in here, Bloomerang Donor Group is lapsed, retained, recaptured, recurring. The only one I didn't select, the only two I didn't select. Oh, I want current. I'm glad I checked that. The only two I didn't select are prospective and new. I don't want them in here. I want all of my current donors, the ones who are not new to giving into my organization. I'm going to click OK. Remember to change the title again. These are returning and above average, not new and above average. If I save that. Okay, so now the list goes on. We have created all of our Giving Tuesday donors overall. We have our new donors, our new and above average, our new and below average, our returning and above average. You guessed it. We're going to do our returning and below average. We would copy the new and below average and open that copy. Except again, this time we're going to change the constituent. I'm going to check myself because now I'm not sure if I want that one in there. So we're going to include everybody except for prospects and new. And we're going to click OK. Don't forget to go into details and change the title of your report. You can see up here 165. Wow, that's a lot. So that's a big group. My returning and below average. All right, so now I have all of the reports that I need to segment my communications with these donors. And you will want to consider, how do you want to do your communication? Are you going to do an email? Are you going to do phone calls? So you can go into emails, for example, and I'm just going to show you a quick example for Giving Tuesday, a thank you note for people who were returning and below average. Consider using your merge fields. Here we inserted a merge field for their name. We want to make this field as personalized as possible. We thank them. We do a little bit of impact storytelling here. We're talking about John Smith and his family and how they came to our center. And we want to make sure we're being very respectful. We don't want to share information that people are not okay with us sharing. So always make sure that you have consent. Always make sure that you're not doing it in an exploitive way. Make sure that you're being very respectful when you share this. And another thing that we want to consider is putting our survey in here. Remember that this is our group that's returning and below. So you can create a survey and you can insert the URL for your survey here. Mine's just a Google form survey. And that way I can get some feedback from this group. This group was the largest group I had. I had 165 people in this group. So I couldn't possibly call them all, but I can find out what they're thinking through a survey. It's a great way to be able to connect and get more information from them. So this is a great way to be able to do that. Now, as far as being able to send this, now that I've created those reports, I am able to go into transaction filters, and I am able to include all donations on 11/29 returning and below. So if they are in the report, all donations on 11/29 returning and below average, they are going to show up here, and you can see it's 165. So this is a great way to be able to just reference that report and then be able to send this information out to that donor. All right. So let's go back and talk about first-time phone calls really quickly, because I know that are there any questions on segmenting communications? Okay, so let's go ahead then, and we're going to talk about being able to do phone calls to your first-time donors. You may have noticed on your dashboard, you do have a section for donor calls. This is actually set up within your Bloomerang system, and one of the intentions of this is to get you to call your donors back within a relatively short time period. So this is only going to go back 7 days. It is not going to go back to Giving Tuesday. for me. So while this is a great resource for me to be able to look at for first-time donors recently, I don't know that I'm going to get these phone calls made for my Giving Tuesday first-time donors from here. It's not going to work. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to look at assigning tasks to people within my organization to make these first-time donor calls. So in order to do that, I want to go into reports, and I can actually do this with bulk tasks. Now, the thing about bulk tasks is it has to be in a constituent report. I can't use the exact same report from down here. So for my all donations 1129 new, I can't use this report. However, I can reference this report in the constituent report. So I want to show you how to do that. The reason for doing this is because it will create a system where we're keeping track of who has been called and who hasn't been called, what kind of things were said during the phone call, and all of this goes into your Bloomerang database and is saved as interactions on the constituents timeline. So this is a really great way to be able to set that up, if you will. So we want to include a filter inside this constituent report. And you can see up here, this is the reason I'm using a constituent report. I can create bulk tasks out of here. So has transactions, and I want a specific transaction, and I want them to be in a transaction report. This is where my transaction report that I just created comes in handy. So I am going to select a report. New, and I just want all new. Here they are. Okay. So this is the report, all donations on 11/29/22 new. I'm going to do all of my above average, below average. My organization wants to call all of these folks. Okay, so I have that created. Now you're going to notice that I don't have here a column with their phone numbers. So I'm going to show you how to add a column. So the column we want to add is a phone number. So all I did was click on add column and clicking on phone number. For the primary phone number, I want to show the phone number. So I'm going to click that and I'm going to click OK. And now I can see their phone numbers. As you can see, some of my constituents do not have phone numbers. So this is where your organization needs to make a decision about how you want to handle those. You may need to go research a little more. Some of them do have emails, so maybe you want to reach out via email. You also could consider adding a filter here that talks about, that asks for the constituents to have a phone number in order to be a part of this report. You can do that if you wish. That might also be something to do. I don't want to lose these folks, so I'm actually going to keep them in here. All right, so when I clicked on create bulk tasks, I can set a due date for this task. I want everyone called by the end of the week. The subject is first time donor thank you call. I'm assigning it to Margie Worrell. The purpose, this is where you have to decide, is it acknowledgement, is it impact? I'm going to call it acknowledgement from my organization. The channel is phone. And here's where you can say, please make calls to these first time donors and thank for their gift. Okay, and I'm going to have 12 tasks created. If you had a file you wanted to upload or a website to reference, you can also do that here. And I'm going to click save. And it shows right here 12 bulk tasks successfully created. Now I want to show you this in a couple places. This is going to show up Oh, wait, I need to save this. Let's do that. Oh, heavens. I have to put this too. So first time donor calls. That seems like a good name. Oh, this name's already taken. Well, you can see that I don't have enough coffee this morning. I apologize. That name's taken too? Well, let's see. Third time's a charm. Let's see. You can see I've been practicing this and I actually have already used those names. All right, so I want to show you where this is going to show up in a couple of places. So on the dashboard, you can see suddenly my tasks are really piling up. I better get busy. That's one place that it's going to show up. Another place that it's going to show up is on the constituents timeline. Okay, so I have a phone call here that I need to make, and you can see that here. But the cool part is this. You're also going to get an email that says that you need to make this phone call. So whoever you assign this to will get this very pleasant email that helps them remember that they need to make this phone call and gives them all the information that they need in order to do so. So it's really, really convenient. And it also will flow back into Bloomerang when you complete it. So for example, if I go back to my dashboard and I'm gonna click on this, okay, this is Maxwell Smart. And let's say I just called him right now. I reached out to him, made the call, click complete and save as an interaction. Okay, so now when I go to his timeline, you can see that this has been updated. Okay, so we have our phone call that we made to him. And we could put notes in here. Maybe he's talked about wanting to volunteer. There's all kinds of ways that we can keep this information, share it with others. Maybe I assigned this to someone else. I can come back and look and see what notes they've included to tell me about the interaction and how it went. The other thing that we were talking about was creating a survey and sharing that out with people in your organization. And the way to do that is through email. We kind of looked at this briefly, but keeping in mind that you want to be able to get donor input. The way that you would do this is inside your email, which you're going to craft yourself. There is a place for content. You will drag a button over here. And when you click on it, you're able to type in any kind of text that you want and make sure that you then put the URL here. Okay, and it will connect them to your survey. You can use any kind of survey platform that you want. Mine is just a Google survey. So that is another way to be able to keep those best practices within Bloomerang. And you'll be able to get that information and you could enter it on their timeline once you see what they've put in, perhaps if that's something that is relevant. Just keeping in mind that you have that capability within Bloomerang. All right, and as far as impact storytelling goes, I think that it's really important to remember, again, that we want to be as sensitive and thoughtful as we can about the stories that we share. I worked previously at United Way, and one of the things that we did was we had a story repository, basically. We did it actually in a very simplistic way. It was just a Google Excel spreadsheet. And we reached out to our organizations and asked them to give us success stories. And those stories really demonstrated the impact of the work that was being done. And we kept those stories in that repository, and then we're able to utilize those whenever we felt the need to have an impact story to demonstrate the impact. So I would encourage you to kind of think about, are there ways that you can do that? Sensitivities, of course, include thinking about HIPAA, any kind of regulations. You want to make sure that you're being very sensitive. Also, making sure that whomever you're sharing stories about is okay with having their story shared. It's surprising, many times people are very open to sharing if they realize it's going to help others. And that is a great way to connect. Sometimes people feel, our donors feel, as we've seen in the information that we shared earlier, disconnected from the work that's being done. And just being able to connect it with humanity, again, sometimes makes that a little bit less so. They're able to feel a little more connected. So I do want to go back to our slides again. All right, and so just to wrap up, we're talking about making retention a priority, thinking about how we can reach out, segmenting our communications so that we are demonstrating that we know our donors, saying thanks thoughtfully and timely before asking again, picking up the phone and making those phone calls, especially to first-time donors, asking donors for their input. They may have thoughts and ideas that we haven't considered, and it's always important to reach out and ask for that. And then telling stories of impact. The work you do is vitally important in your community, and you're doing amazing things. So you need to tell your donors that. They don't see it every day. They aren't right alongside you, seeing all of the amazing things that are being done. So make sure that you are thinking about how can we respectfully share that with our donors, is really vitally important too. I do want to put in a plug here for our mobile app. It's a great way to be able to access all of the components that we just talked about, including your donor retention figures, right in front of you. It's in the palm of your hand everywhere you go, and it connects you to other people within the database. So check out the mobile app. You can check it out on our website. You can download it from wherever you get your apps. It is available for Android and iOS. Some of the resources that we're going to share with you today, you can check in to our knowledge base, some Bloomerang Academy sessions that might be helpful to you. And then also some other resources here, a lot of different types of resources that you can engage with. And this last one was the one I wanted to point out about storytelling. I think is a really great resource to be able to use. If you have any questions as you're working through this and the resources aren't there for you, don't forget, you can click on our little question mark at the top right-hand corner of your screen and get help. You can look up information in our knowledge base, connect with videos and articles, and you can also chat online with our support team, which is amazing. And so I'm going to do a quick poll. Which of these practices do you think you're going to put in place this year? So considering moving forward, which ones do you feel might speak to you and might be useful to you moving in that direction? And you can choose more than one. This one's multiple choice. So, all right. Got almost everybody. I'm going to go ahead and share the results. This is great. So it looks like we have a lot of people considering segmenting communications and phone calls to first-time donors, and also that impactful storytelling and doing surveys. So great. Thank you so much for participating in that poll. Really appreciate it. All right. So that's really the content that I have for today. We thank you for attending. Visit our website for more upcoming academies. If you have any questions, feel free to pop those into the Q&A or into the chat. And I'll hang on here for just a couple minutes in case there are any questions. But thank you so much for attending today. Thank you, Karen.
Hi, Margie. Just jumping in to say, I thought that was fantastic. And I really love what you shared about collecting those success stories and creating a repository. And I love how you mentioned it doesn't have to be anything fancy, right? You can start with just a spreadsheet. The important thing is to just get started collecting those. And I think what I've found from my experiences, a lot of that impact is very obvious to us because we're very close to it, but it's not necessarily obvious to the rest of the constituents. So don't fall into that trap of, well, of course this is what we do, and of course it makes an impact. You still need to tell that story.
That is so true, Diana. And we fell into that quite a bit at United Way with our, we just assumed that people understood because we were so close to the work all the time. But it's not the case at all. And we actually did do a survey and discovered how little people knew about us, which then really created the need for that repository and being able to share those stories. So I would encourage you, yeah, to really think about, and like you say, Diana, it doesn't have to be fancy, just a place where you can have those wonderful stories to share.
That's a good point too. You might be surprised what you see in some of the survey results that come in.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Oh, well, thanks, Margie. This is great information.
Wonderful. I'm so glad that everyone could join us today. If there's no other questions, feel free to reach out anytime. academy@bloomerang.com. You can ask us questions. We're happy to answer those. But otherwise, happy holidays to everyone. And we hope to see you at another Academy soon.